Most productivity apps don't fail because they're bad. They fail because the moment your life gets messy, busy, or exhausting, they quietly disappear. And if you're honest, you've already forgotten most of the apps you were excited about just weeks ago. Welcome to Quiet Discipline Method. Every year, I test dozens of productivity apps. They promise focus, clarity, efficiency, and control. For a few days, sometimes even a week, I feel sharper, organized, motivated. It feels like I've finally found the missing system. Then, real life shows up. Deadlines collide, energy drops, stress creeps in, and suddenly those beautiful apps start to feel heavy. One extra click, one extra decision, one more thing demanding attention. And without any dramatic moment, I stop opening them. Not because I chose to quit, but because friction always wins. That's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to talk about. Productivity tools don't die loudly, they die silently. And most people assume the problem is their discipline, their focus, or their motivation. It isn't. The real problem is this. Most tools are designed for perfect days, not real ones. This video isn't about the best Mac apps. It's not about features, rankings, or trends. It's about survival. These are the apps that stayed when motivation disappeared, the ones that still worked when I was tired, distracted, or overwhelmed, the tools that didn't demand discipline but quietly supported it. What you're about to hear isn't a highlight reel. It's the result of deleting, failing, rebuilding, and stripping everything down to what actually lasts. And by the end of this video, you won't just see a list of apps, you'll understand why most systems collapse and why a few endure. If you value clarity over hype and systems over shortcuts, consider subscribing to the channel. It's the simplest way to support this work and help me keep creating videos that go deeper than surface-level productivity. Now, before we go further, I want you to think about this question and answer honestly in the comments. When productivity tools fail you, what do you believe is the real cause? A. I lack discipline and consistency. B. My system was never built for real life. Comment A or B below. If most productivity systems fail because they demand too much from you, then the only logical place to start rebuilding is here, friction. Real focus doesn't begin with ambition or motivation. It begins the moment you sit down and decide whether starting feels heavy or effortless. That first few seconds determines everything, and over time, I've learned that the difference between productive days and wasted ones often comes down to how much resistance exists before the work even begins. This is where the foundation of my system lives. The first tool I rely on is Alfred, and I don't use it because it's flashy or clever. I use it because it's invisible. Speed is not a luxury, it's a requirement. When I press a shortcut and a search bar appears instantly, my brain stays in motion. There's no pause, no waiting, no subtle break in momentum. Opening apps, finding files, triggering quick actions, it all happens without conscious effort. And that matters more than most people realize. Every delay, no matter how small, creates a moment where your attention can wander. Alfred protects that fragile state of flow before it slips away. The second layer is Bartender, which solves a quieter problem, visual noise. When your screen is crowded with icons, alerts, and background processes, your mind mirrors that clutter. Even when you're not actively looking at them, they register. Bartender lets me decide what deserves visibility and what doesn't. The result isn't just a cleaner menu bar, it's a calmer mental environment. Fewer signals competing for attention means more energy directed toward the task in front of me. Then there's Session, which addresses the psychological resistance to starting work. Long stretches of time feel intimidating. They trigger avoidance. A focused 25-minute session, on the other hand, feels safe, contained, achievable. When I start a session, I'm not committing to an entire afternoon of effort. I'm simply agreeing to show up for a short window. More often than not, that's all it takes. Momentum builds naturally once you're in motion. Session doesn't force discipline. It lowers the barrier to entry until discipline becomes unnecessary. Together, these tools do something subtle but powerful. They remove excuses before they form. They reduce the number of decisions I need to make just to begin. There's no negotiating with myself, no preparing to prepare. The system gently carries me into work without resistance. This is the part most people skip. They chase advanced workflows, complex setups, and endless features without realizing that productivity is fragile at the beginning. If starting feels heavy, the system will eventually fail. But when friction disappears, focus has a chance to survive. Once friction is no longer the thing slowing you down, a different problem appears. How to think clearly, create consistently, and move ideas from your head into the real world without losing them along the way. This is where most productivity systems quietly break, not at the start, but in the middle. Ideas scatter, plans fragment, tools multiply, and instead of creating, you end up managing the act of creating. At the center of my creative workflow is Riverside, because reliability is non-negotiable when your work involves your voice, your thoughts, or other people's time. When I hit record, I don't want to think about internet stability or technical failures. I want to be present. Riverside records locally, preserves full quality, and handles the rest in the background. That single design choice removes anxiety. Conversations flow better when you trust the system to do its job without supervision. And once the recording is done, everything continues forward. Transcripts, editing, captions, publishing, without forcing you to rebuild the process from scratch. But recording is only one side of creation. The other is thinking, organizing, and deciding what matters. That's where Notion becomes essential. Notion isn't powerful because it does everything. It's powerful because it bends. My ideas, tasks, content plans, long-term goals, collaborations, and reference material all live in one evolving space. Nothing feels locked into a rigid structure. As my work changes, the system changes with it. That flexibility keeps me from outgrowing my own tools. Notion Calendar completes that picture by bringing time back into the equation. Ideas without time stay abstract. Seeing content plans, meetings, and personal commitments on a single timeline forces clarity. It makes trade-offs visible. It turns intention into action. Instead of juggling multiple calendars and mental notes, everything converges in one place, reducing the cognitive load that comes from constantly switching contexts. Then there's the ChatGPT desktop app, which has become less of a tool and more of a silent collaborator. I use it to sharpen outlines, pressure test ideas, explore alternative angles, and compress complex thoughts into something clearer. The desktop version matters because speed and continuity matter. Conversations don't feel disposable, they evolve. And that ongoing context allows deeper thinking over time, rather than one-off interactions. What ties all of this together is not automation or intelligence, but flow. Ideas move from thought to structure to execution without friction. There's no constant exporting, reformatting, or rebuilding. Each tool hands work to the next without resistance. This is the creative core of my system. It doesn't try to make me more creative, it simply removes the obstacles that interrupt creativity. And when those obstacles disappear, consistency becomes natural, not forced. Once your ideas can move freely and your work has a clear direction, productivity stops being about speed and starts becoming about endurance. This is the stage most people underestimate. They optimize for output but forget that systems must survive weeks, months, and years of use. Small points of friction turn into exhaustion, tiny anxieties accumulate into burnout. And this is where the quiet, unglamorous tools become the most valuable. Screen Studio is one of those tools that protects momentum without drawing attention to itself. When I record my screen, I don't want to think like an editor. I want to think like a creator. Screen Studio automatically adds smooth zooms and motion based on my behavior, where I click, where I move, what I focus on. What used to take hours of manual keyframing now happens in the background. Editing stops being a barrier and becomes a final polish. That difference is what keeps me consistent instead of drained. File movement is another invisible drain most people ignore until it breaks their flow. Local send and blip exist for a simple reason. They remove thinking. Whether I'm on the same network or not, files move from my phone to my Mac without decisions, confirmations, or friction. There's no moment where I hesitate or delay a task because transferring something feels annoying. Work continues exactly where it left off. Al dente pro represents a different kind of thinking, long-term respect for your tools. When your laptop is the foundation of your work, its health matters. Constantly keeping it charged at full capacity slowly degrades the battery, even if you don't feel it day to day. Al dente quietly manages charge limits and calibration cycles, preserving accuracy and lifespan. It's not exciting, but it's the kind of decision that pays dividends over years, not days. Hand mirror is almost invisible in comparison, yet surprisingly impactful. Before a meeting or recording, it gives me a simple truth. This is how I appear right now. No surprises, no rushed adjustments, just awareness. That small moment of preparation reduces stress and keeps me grounded before stepping into a conversation. And then there's SyncThing. If everything else in this system supports productivity, SyncThing protects peace of mind. I work off an external drive, and the fear of losing months of work is something you only understand after you've felt it. SyncThing runs quietly in the background, syncing my entire drive to a separate location without subscriptions or cloud dependency. It doesn't ask for attention, it doesn't interrupt, it simply ensures that no single failure can erase progress. That safety changes how you work. When you're no longer afraid of loss, you think more clearly, you experiment more freely, you stop working defensively. The system becomes something you trust instead of something you constantly check. This layer of the workflow isn't about speed, aesthetics, or optimization. It's about sustainability, about removing the subtle stressors that slowly drain energy over time. And once those stressors are gone, productivity stops feeling fragile. It becomes something you can rely on even when conditions aren't ideal. When a system finally feels stable and calm, the next evolution isn't adding more tools, it's letting the system respond to you without asking. This is where my workflow stops being a collection of apps and starts becoming an environment. Home Assistant connects the digital state of my Mac to the physical space around me. It observes what I'm doing and quietly adjusts everything else to support that intention. When I begin a recording session, the lighting in my room changes automatically. My phone shifts into Do Not Disturb. There's no reminder, no checklist, no manual switch. The system already knows. That shift matters more than it sounds. Every time you have to remember to prepare your environment, you spend attention before the work even begins. Automation removes that burden. It respects your focus by handling the small decisions in advance. Over time, those saved moments accumulate into deeper concentration and less mental fatigue. What makes this powerful isn't complexity, but awareness. The system isn't reacting to time or schedules, it's reacting to state. Opening certain applications, starting specific processes, or entering a focused mode becomes a signal, and the environment responds accordingly. Lights, notifications, sound, and context align around the task without interruption. There's an important warning here, though. Automation is a deep rabbit hole. It's easy to overbuild, overthink, and turn simplicity into another source of friction. The goal isn't control for its own sake. The goal is support. The moment automation demands more attention than it saves, it's failed its purpose. This final layer completes the system because it removes the last dependency on discipline. You don't need to remember to focus. You don't need to prepare your space manually. The system carries that responsibility for you, quietly and consistently. And that brings everything full circle. Productivity isn't about doing more. It's about reducing the number of decisions you have to make just to do what already matters. When your tools, your environment, and your habits work together, effort becomes cleaner, calmer, sustainable. If this approach resonates with you, if you care more about systems that last than hacks that impress, I invite you to stay with the channel. Share what's actually survived in your own workflow, because the most valuable tools are rarely the loudest ones. At its best, a productivity system doesn't demand discipline, it embodies it. And when that happens, progress stops feeling forced and starts feeling inevitable. At its core, this entire system points to a simple truth. Productivity is not about forcing yourself to do more, but about removing the quiet obstacles that make consistency hard. When your tools reduce friction instead of adding pressure, discipline stops feeling like a battle. What lasts is not motivation nor complexity, but clarity. Clarity of intention, environment, and process. A system that survives real life doesn't demand perfection. It adapts, supports, and stays with you even on your most ordinary days. The deeper lesson here is this: build your life the way you build a strong system. Eliminate what drains energy. Protect what creates momentum. Design your environment so that doing the right thing becomes the easiest option, not the hardest one. Start small. Reduce friction first. Let consistency grow naturally from there. Now, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you believe productivity comes more from discipline or from environment and systems? Please share your thoughts in the comments so everyone can learn from different viewpoints. And if this resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support is what gives this channel the momentum to keep creating deeper, more meaningful content.